Welcome to session 6, the last and most amazing session of the conference that you will attend today. We appreciate everyone who has taken the time to spend their Saturday learning from individuals from around the state. This session is also going to be worth your time. It is presented by Linda Fields and Sarah Russell. I will be putting the attendance link in the chat. I'll do that a couple of times throughout. Please make sure that you complete the attendance form. You only have to do it once, but make sure that it is completed. And then at the very end of the session, I will put a session survey link into the chat, and please make sure that you fill that out so we have feedback for our presenters. And with that, I will turn the time over to the most amazing presenters, Sarah Russell and Linda Fields.
Good afternoon and welcome to session 6, the last session of the Teaching and Learning Conference. Keeping the goal in mind, and we're very, very grateful for those of you that are participating in our session today. The goal in mind for us is being able to support and advance our academic English language development of all of our multilingual learner students so that they can graduate with a plan and opportunities for the future. My name is Linda Fields, and I am one of the education programs professionals that support districts and LEAs with their English learner program.
Hi, I'm Sarah Russell, and I am the other education programs professional who I work with Linda Fields in the Office of Student and School Support. Easy for me to say, supporting our multilingual learners and migrant education students. Please forgive me, I have a cold, and so I'm having a little bit of trouble with the speaking today. I am putting a link in the chat right now to a copy of the slides. You don't need to follow along on it unless you want to.
So we have 3 learning outcomes for this presentation. First, we will briefly explore Nevada multilingual learner demographics and meet 2 hypothetical Nevada multilingual learner students. Next, we will offer 1 teacher move to provide a culturally supportive and asset-based learning environment. Then we will offer 2 teacher moves that develop multilingual learner students' academic English language development and content understanding during lessons. These moves include embedding language expectations and instructional supports that vary according to students' current English language proficiency levels.
Throughout this presentation, you'll hear us referring to students as either being multilingual learners or English learners. We use these phrases interchangeably. Both refer to our students who have bring the assets into the classroom of learning and communicating in more than one language, usually their home language or their heritage language and English, but often other languages too. In Nevada, we use the WIDA Access Assessment to measure these multilingual or English learner students' growth and in their academic English development. So ML obviously means there's multiple languages, and English and a heritage language are multiple, and EL refers more to the target of learning English. Obviously, there used to be other terminology we used more, but most of that is faded out of use. But ML, EL, you'll hear us using interchangeably. Let's take a look at how many ELs we're serving in Nevada. In the 21-22 school year, our EL count increased to 70,179, which was up from 67,704. The biggest subgroup increase of that increase was amongst our newcomers, who were 8.74% and increased to being 14% of our ELs. So that means that 1 in 7 of the English learners in Nevada are newcomers. They're new to the country. And as you can see, over half of our multilingual learners are short-term ELs. There's 52% of them. And the overall and the long-term ELs rose by about 0.5% to 33.72%. The language, the home or heritage languages of these students, 2/3 of them their home language is Spanish. But about a quarter of them, their home language is actually English. And this has to do with how parents fill out the home language survey when students register. So they might have marked like that was the primary language, but they also marked somewhere else that Spanish is spoken in the home. And then when the student took the WIDA screener, they were designated English learner. Other languages our students speak in Nevada, the most common after Spanish and English are Chinese, Filipino, Amharic, Vietnamese, and Tagalog. After Tagalog, there's Russian, Arabic, Korean, Swahili, and Portuguese. So definitely a diverse group of students falls under this multilingual category. If you are following along on the slides, you can click on that link to get the Nevada EL data fact sheet. If not, I will give you the link right now in the chat. Here it is.
Oh, I gave it to him.
Oh, thank you, Linda. I just lost myself. So we're going to drill down to the district or LEA level. In Nevada, LEA, the local education agency, usually means the district that you work for. However, if you're working in one of our state charter schools, then your LEA is the state public charter school authority. So please click on that link that is in the chat to access the Nevada EL data fact sheet. You, take a look at the EL data for your LEA and consider the 2 questions on this slide. What are your key takeaways from this data once you find it? And how does your district or LEA ensure that content teachers know and understand their multilingual students' proficiency levels? So 2 things. When you look at the data, what are you taking away? What do you see? What do you notice? And 2, how is your LEA making sure that the educators in your LEA know and understand the students' proficiency levels? So just take a moment to consider your data and these questions, and then share your takeaways about the data or how your school district communicates the information about the ELs in the chat, or you can come off mute. And we're just going to give you a couple of minutes to look through that, and we look forward to seeing your observations in the chat. I'm going to review the directions one more time. So take a look at the Nevada EL data fact sheet, which you can either find in the slides if you're following along in the slides, or you can find a link to it in the chat. And as you find the information for your school district or LEA, what are your takeaways? What do you notice about your multilingual learners? What's maybe surprising or interesting to you? And how does your district or LEA ensure that content teachers know and understand this information that you're seeing on this fact sheet?
So you're also welcome to just to come off mute and share any takeaways from your school district, or just in general, all of the data that's on that fact sheet.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Maria, and I'm from Clark County School District. I've seen this record already since I attended a QTEL training that's provided by my district. And so that's like, it's like how they support the teachers with regards to teaching our EL. And also, sorry. And also, there was a partnership between UNLV and Clark County School District. It's called the Project Pueblo, where we earned our master's degree and be ELD specialist.
We have a quick question for you. How do the educators at your school, how do they receive the access reports, or how is it that they come to know that the assessment results from the access, or just general knowledge and proficiency levels of their multilingual learner students?
I don't think I work in CCSD, and I've never seen this data before ever.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Right.
So
I haven't seen it ever, and I appreciate the person that spoke before about that Project Pueblo, but there was 95 teachers accepted into that. We have what, 18,000. So I mean, I think it's a great start, somewhat kind of wink wink, but
the purpose of this is to hopefully level the playing field across. I mean, because obviously it's the 5th largest school district in the nation. So I'm very excited to hear that Maria was able to be a part of that group. And so as we move forward in Nevada, it's leveling the playing field for all educators to be able to access this information and to be able to provide an assets-based learning environment for all of our multilingual learner students. And so too, though, that Maria was able to get the master's in the ELAD is huge. And there's lots of programs going on in CCSD. And really part of this presentation, and at the end of this session, we'll also offer some other additional professional learning opportunities. That's really the purpose, is to hopefully level the playing field of teacher preparedness across Nevada.
I'd like to draw attention to some of the voices in the chat too. Sarah says, there are some languages represented in the data that I did not know existed in the district, right? And that's pretty common, because as situations change around the world, we get different subgroups of people from different languages coming in, and it's just it changes, from year to year to year who we're serving, and I'm often surprised at what I find in the language data. And then sometimes I'll get a student who isn't represented in the data at all, who has language, who needs language learning support. Erin says, I don't think my district does much to make sure we understand the proficiency levels. And I've heard that frustration from other teachers before, like that there's teachers who really, really want to do well by their multilingual learners, and they feel like they have trouble accessing the information that they need to support students well. Meredith says, I've never been provided WIDA results for any of my students. And that's something that we hope at NDE Infinite Campus can be a tool to help communicate better more in the future. But that's, of course, been a frustrating journey also. But I'd love it if one of the end results of this conversation is that we take this back to our building leaders and say, hey, how do we communicate about this better and more effectively? Jen says that teachers at her school has access to Elevation. And for those of you who don't have access to Elevation, it's a fantastic software that not only gives you data about students' proficiency levels, but also gives teachers a lot of resources about how to adapt lessons or do targeted tutoring for students based on their proficiency levels. It's a great product for people who know how to use it and have access to it. Lisa says, I've never seen this data before. And so we're hoping that you can go back and share it after this. And V says, WIDA results are available in IC for all limited English proficient students under the assessment tab. And I think that varies by district who has access to that, but I could be wrong. You think, Linda, everyone has that?
Yeah, everyone has access. You might have to go out of campus instruction though and go into campus tools to access it. So on your rosters, you might see a flag for English learner, but unfortunately that flag doesn't populate the results. So you have to go to your assessments tab in tools to be able to access, unless you have sort of other rights where you have district edition. And so that's part of where we're going with this conversation today. Because if you have access to the students' MAP scores and the students' SBAC scores, and you have multilingual learners in your classroom, then you really should have access to their access results as well.
All right, one more comment before we move on. Clark County used to really push the English language learner student success advocate role. We would receive training and then take it back to our staff and do walkthroughs with the EL department. That was pre-COVID. And that definitely reflects a lot of what we see. Like there was some great work going on in every district before COVID, and COVID definitely took its toll on our practices and our systems. And we're excited to be part of this conversation and like let's get focused back on our multilingual learners and how we can support them again. Tammy says we're using WIDA but adding to elevations. Yeah, and that's part of how elevations work is it draws the WIDA data into it, which is part of what's great. So let's take a look at some students.
So now we're going to dive a little deeper into learning about Nevada multilingual students by choosing one of two hypothetical ML students who attend Nevada schools. Their names are Nairobi and Itzel. If you're an elementary school educator, we suggest you follow Nairobi, who is in 3rd grade. Or if you are a secondary educator, we suggest you follow Itzel, who is in 7th grade. Sarah's going to drop some links in the chat. So we'd like you to choose one student's learning profile and access report to read. Go ahead and take 3 to 4 minutes to read the student profile and the access report for Nairobi or Itzel. Then please share out assets Nairobi or Itzel bring to their classroom and what these students can do linguistically based on their current academic English language proficiency levels. Please share this in the chat, or we can also come offline like we just did to share as well. Sarah, can you back up one, please? Next slide. And as you're reading, we're looking for what assets they bring and also what stakeholders you think contributed to this learning profile. So those of you who read Itzel's learning profile and access report, we'll start with Itzel first. If you could just show me in the chat with a raised hand who followed Itzel's profile and access report.
It looks like Jen's got a hand up.
Okay, Jen?
Hi, I'm here.
Excellent. Do you have anything to share about Itzel and her learning profile, or anything about Itzel you'd like to share with the group? Excuse me.
She
Sorry.
was she is a 7th grader, and she came to the US from Guatemala 6 months ago, I believe. And she's excited, but she also gets overwhelmed. She had a 1.0 on the WIDA screener, and she's currently at a 1.5. So she's emerging. She likes time outdoors. She likes talking to other girls her age and listening to music. She has high competency in algebra when she can understand the vocabulary, and she also likes to support her teachers and peers. She is able to put graphics into order and do matching sentences of cause and effect when talking about characters in a book, for instance. She does use Google Translate for support, but when teachers support her, she can participate in grade level dialogue about the content. And she can answer who, what, when, where, and text dependent questions. She also uses sentence frames and translanguaging. She has a good foundation in writing and reading in Spanish. So she's literate in the L1, but she'll translate her first thoughts after brainstorming and then translate to English after she writes in Spanish. She's continued to be supported in the content, and she's receiving newcomer services.
Excellent.
Sorry.
That was an excellent recap. That was beautiful. Anyone else would like to add to Itzel's learning profile or access report? Any takeaways from our access report for those of you who had not seen the access reports before?
It looks like Erin might have a hand up in the chat.
Okay, Erin?
Can you repeat what your question was? I'm sorry.
Oh, just for those of you who, well, you can share anything, but the question is that for those of you who are new to seeing the access reports, was there anything that contributed to understanding Itzel more just from her assessment results?
Well, I think more than anything, the whole report helped, but looking at her like scores, it showed us that her comprehension was higher than her ability to like restate what she understood, right? And then like her organization skills. And so I think a lot of that goes back to the idea that like it has to come in, be translated to her language of origin, find her answer, and then translate it back to English to put out, which is a lot of work for a student who is especially like new to the language and everything else.
Right, and I want to point out with Itzel, there's times where translation is needed, but there's other times where translanguaging is really optimal and supported. And translanguaging is when she's able to interact and engage in both languages to be able to negotiate her learning. And so sometimes I always think it's just straight translation, but really our students, all of our multilingual learners need opportunities to be able to translanguage at different times, depending upon, as we talked about, that she has a proficiency in Spanish, in reading and writing, but she also has some interrupted schooling, right? So for her ability, especially now as a newcomer with an overall of 1.5, she needs that ability to be able to translate and negotiate to get that content understanding. Stakeholders, does anyone have anything, like what stakeholders did you infer that were involved in developing Itzel's learning profile? Does anybody want to come off mute and share? So Itzel's a seventh grader, right? So how many teachers does she have? She probably has 6. And she also has, who didn't explain here, was Mr. Han, but who else maybe would contribute to her learning profile?
In reading the report, it looked like her parents played a role as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And then 2, as we move to Nairobi, it's 2 at the secondary level, because there's a lot more educators, but you can always go to the previous year. So she wasn't there, and she wasn't most likely there in 6th grade, but a lot of times with our multilingual learners who have, a lot of them have been here since kindergarten, you can go to the previous school year's teacher too, to be able to collect that information for the profile. So on to Nairobi. If anyone could share with us Nairobi, if anyone would be willing to come off chat and share Nairobi's linguistic abilities and assets that Nairobi brings to his 3rd grade classroom. Do we have any elementary teachers out here, or are we all secondary? Lisa, go ahead.
All right. Sorry, I'm multitasking, so I was like, somebody else will volunteer, surely. So Nairobi is a 3rd grader. He has attended school in the United States. He was born in Nevada, lives with his family in Henderson. He's gone to the past 4 years. He and his older brother have attended the elementary school. He's grown up in a bilingual household. His overall score in WIDA was 3.3. His 3rd grade teacher has observed that Nairobi has a few very close friends from a variety of ethnic backgrounds, but he sometimes shuts down in like a larger group. His listening score was incredible, so he's understanding most of what his teachers and peers are saying. Reading and writing profile. He gravitates toward visuals, gets excited about filling in timelines and charts, those kinds of things. So he is struggling a little bit more with the reading text. And this is that Ms. Lehigh incorporates Nairobi's interests and learning preferences into her planning for his instructional supports.
Excellent. That's very, very good. So one of the things I just wanted to point out for those of you who have never seen the Access reports, this is where Infinite Campus only gives you numbers and does not give you descriptions of what the varying proficiency levels that Lisa just noted to, that our students, while we a lot of times we think of them as their overall proficiency level, they have varying proficiency levels in listening, speaking, reading, and writing that we can work with as strengths and then also develop to be able to move them forward towards academic English proficiency. And just for those of you, just a reminder that on the what's met criteria in Nevada on the Access is a 4.5. So once our students meet a 4.5 on the overall of the Access, then they are exited and then we monitor them for 4 years. Okay, next slide, please. So we have one teacher move here, and it has to do with student profiles. And so we encourage you or invite you today to be able to choose one multilingual student that you have in your classroom, and based on their assessment, Access assessment scores, and developing a student profile for them, that you just seek collaboration from stakeholders, from previous teachers, from the parent guardians, and from the student themselves to be able to better understand the student's assets and current linguistic abilities. And I believe in the chat, Sarah is going to drop the student learning profile template, but we also have a link to this in the presentation as well. And
I dropped it in the chat already. People should.
Okay, and then do you just want to open it up really quick so we can just show them? And the link is in view only, so you would just file and make a copy. And of course, you could make it any, you could change it to anything you want, but we have, if you could scroll down a little bit. So there's just so we got the background, family members, school history, strengths and interests, learning preferences, English language proficiency results. And see, we're going to stop here at can-do description. And so that's what's nice about the access reports, is it also gives you student moves that the student can do at these given proficiency levels. And then we have the general expressive abilities to inform language expectations as we move forward in the presentation. Thank you, Sarah. Questions about student profiles or the ML Nevada data? Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
All right, no questions? All right, so that was teacher move 1. Now we're going to talk about teacher move 2. When you are planning using your when you're planning your NVAX standards-based lessons, your lesson outcomes are typically based in these key language uses. When you've identified a lesson topic, consider how students will demonstrate mastery of that lesson's topic. Based on the lesson outcomes you are planning, create a language expectation that has students engaging in the language process of narrating, informing, explaining, arguing, or discussing. Keeping in mind students practicing the language uses listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Identifying how students will use these key language uses to develop academic language is our second teacher move. So a sample language expectation, let's talk about Nairobi and her third grade classroom his third grade classroom a little more, pardon me. And so as we remember, Nairobi is strong in math. And he's in a math class where the lesson topic is dividing whole numbers and fractions into equal groups. A language expectation his teacher might have is explain a solution and steps used to solve the problem with others through visuals to support their approach and or solution. So his teacher, Miss Lell, expects students to use language to explain the solution and the steps they want to. Students will explain to each other and will have visual supports to help them explain the steps. Notice that the verb explain comes from the key language use graphic from the previous slide. Notice also that this language expectation is a logical part of the lesson. Of course, Miss Lell wants her students to be able to explain the steps. Is this key language expectation just for Nairobi or just for the ML? Of course not. This is Mrs. Lell's expectation for how all students will demonstrate learning. Whether or not you've written language expectation down for your students before, we are sure you have them for your students. Because Nairobi is strong in math, and because he can explain his ideas using visuals, we can expect that this language expectation can be achieved by Nairobi. Because Nairobi is a little shy with larger groups, and because his overall composite score is 3.3, the visuals are probably key to his success, and this lesson will likely strengthen not only his math skills, but also his language skills and his confidence speaking with others. Here's another example of a language expectation. This time it's for Itzel's 7th grade English Language Arts class. Notice that in this case, students are identifying features in a written text. The lesson topic is more general than the language expectation as is typical, but it is clear how the language expectation directly supports the lesson topic, indicates how all students will demonstrate learning, and makes explicit how students will use the academic language. As long as Mr. Hahn and Itzel's ELA teacher are collaboratively planning to ensure she has access to the supports that help her excel, she has, such as translation and translanguaging supports, given her strong reading skills in her native language, we can expect that she can achieve this language expectation. Furthermore, native English speakers and multilingual learners alike will benefit from meeting this language expectation. Teacher move 3 ties teacher move 1 and teacher move 2 together. So let's take a look at the third teacher move, which is instructional support for multilingual learners. Now, in teacher move 1, we profiled our students. and in teacher move 2, we identified what our language expectations are for our students. Now we're going to look at how to make sure our multilingual learners have the supports they need to grow their language assets and reach those expectations in teacher move 3. Based on your student strengths and proficiency levels, you may use some instructional supports for all of the multilingual learners in your classroom, or you may target specific supports to specific students. Some types of supports could be graphic, sensory, interactive and collaborative, or language supports. The Nevada English Language Development, or ELD, framework and instructional guidance documents were created in 2019, so right before the shutdown, right, by the Nevada Department of Education in collaboration with the Nevada English in collaboration with Nevada EL and content teachers to support the implementation of our national ELD standards from the WIDA Consortium. These documents were designed to provide instructional academic English language development supports by content area, grade band, and varying English proficiency levels. Here, I'm going to, Linda just pasted a link to the Nevada ELD Standards Framework and Instructional Guidance Documents. What you will see when you click on that link is a list of these documents, and we're not going to spend time going through all of them today, but we encourage you to bookmark this page so that you can get back to it. But as you can see on this page, it's divided by subject areas, and in each of these subject areas, it's then divided by grade band. Again, we strongly encourage you to bookmark this so that you can come back to it later. Oh my gosh, give me my screen back. All of the Nevada ELD frameworks are organized the same way. If you open up any of the ELD standards framework documents for any subject or grade band, you will find these 5 subsections in sections 2 and 3. You'll see section 2A is for student moves. Section 2B is for teacher moves. It'll give you a great list of instructional supports you might want to incorporate into your lessons. Section 2C, teacher moves, is collaborative support. So great ways to get the students collaborating to use academic language in the classroom. Section 3A is to help with language expectations, which we went over earlier. And section 3B is teacher moves by task and success criteria. So as you get used to using these documents, you will find it's fairly easy to find what you're looking for, and will know how to apply it to your students and lessons. In the framework documents, instructional supports are organized by English proficiency level bands. So you'll see that on the left, you can see it's entering and emerging, which is levels 1 and 2. And then in the middle, it's developing and expanding, which is levels 3 and 4. And then on the right, it's bridging and reaching, which is levels 5 and 6. Notice on the 2B and subsequent 2C charts, some supports overlap across proficiency levels. To instructionally support Itzel's academic English language development, she has an overall proficiency level of 1.5. You would look at instructional supports in the first column. For Nairobi, who has an overall proficiency level 3.3, you would look for instructional supports in the middle column. And in section 2C, teacher moves for collaborative supports. You can see ideas here for how to do collaborative supports. Again, appropriate instructional supports for ETSL can be found in the first column, entering emerging, and appropriate instructional supports for Nairobi can be found in the middle column, developing and expanding. Both sections 2B and 2C of the framework provide examples of supports that are particularly beneficial at the indicated proficiency levels for the intended lesson topic and outcome.
Sarah, can we go back to slide 15 really quick before we move
Yes.
forward? So real quickly, I don't know if we perhaps supported well enough the introduction and the reason for the Nevada English Language Development Standards. These standard framework and instructional guidance documents, they were created in 2019, as Sarah alluded to earlier, by the Nevada Department of Education in collaboration with Nevada EL and content teachers to support the implementation of our national ELD standards that come from the WIDA Consortium. So there is the connection. Our national standards and our national assessment comes from the WIDA Consortium. But the Nevada ELD Standards framework were intended, the purpose was to help support content teachers, giving them the ability to provide instructional supports and to better understand how to target varying proficiency levels for those multilingual learner students. Thank you. So we go back to slide. Slide 19, right. Okay, cool. So now where we're at is we're going to take the frameworks. And again, we hope that you did bookmark them because we don't plan to open them up. But we're going to go back to Nairobi's math lesson. And just a reminder that Nairobi's overall proficiency level is a 3.3, which is developing. The lesson topic that in his math class with Mrs. Thiel is dividing whole numbers and fractions into equal groups. The language expectation that his teacher provided for all students was to explain a solution and steps to solve a problem with others through visuals to support approach and for a solution. Now we are getting ready to utilize the Nevada English Language Development Framework documents, section 2B and 2C of the 4-5 math framework. Next slide, please. So we're not going to open up the document right now, but you do have those documents. So what we chose for this lesson, the math lesson, is to, based on the 2B grade 4-5 math ELD framework documents, 2 examples of supporting Nairobi would be to provide explicit instruction and practice for students to construct the language using sentence and discourse starters, anchor charts, and visual aids, and ask open-ended questions within small group triad and require full sentence responses. With regard to collaborative supports, Nairobi can continue to pair triad small group discussions by connecting ideas, generating original questions, and using graphic, interactive, and language supports as needed. Now, for a student like Nairobi, this is especially important because if you notice based on his profile, he's reticent in larger groups. He's less comfortable, more comfortable in smaller groups. And he really does still need the anchor charts and the vocabulary and the language supports to be able to adequately, because he's very good in math, but he still needs the language and that support and opportunities to practice that language so that he can move his academic and content understanding forward. Next slide. Now we're going to move on to instructional supports for ETSL's English Language Arts lesson. So just a reminder that ETSL's English EL proficiency level as a 7th grader is a 1.5 entering emerging, which we know for those of us who've taught 7th grade before, that is a big differentiation that the teacher really has a lift to be able to support ETSL during her English Language Arts course. Lesson topic, analyze a written argument by focusing on structure and organization about serving organic foods at school. So essentially, eventually, right now ETSL is reading about arguments supporting for and against providing or serving organic foods at school. The language expectation that the teacher provided for all students is that within a text, identify the arguments supporting claims that are clear, relevant, and credible. Now we turn to the Nevada ELD, ELA Standards, Frameworks, and Instructional Guidance Document, grades 6, 8. And we will also be looking at sections 2B and 2C of this framework. Again, Sarah also put the link in the chat. In regards to section 2B, providing opportunities for translanguaging and multilingual learner support during the task, providing a list of important concepts on a graphic organizer. And this is especially true not just for the text structures of claim, evidence, and reasoning, or claim and counterclaim. It's also just for the transitional language that she would find within an argument itself, that transitional language that signals the type of language that would that alludes to parts of the argument. And then very important as well as building background in key language and concepts. Section 2C, participate in paired, triad, small group discussions using graphic organizers and language supports. In this case, Itzel will benefit not just from translanguaging, but at this point, because arguments is a much more difficult task to teach, that she might need support in the primary language, in this case, Spanish as well. And then finally, participating with a strategic partner at a higher English proficiency level or with same language peers. Questions about teacher moves 2, embedding language expectations, or teacher move 3, utilizing the Nevada ELD Standards Framework and Instructional Guidance documents to support your multilingual students at varying proficiency levels. I have a question for the group. Has anyone, raise your hand in the chat if this is the first time you've seen the Nevada ELD Standards Framework and Instructional Guidance documents. So I don't see any hands, which means that these documents have or come off chat. So Denise says yes, this is her first time saying it. Thank you, Denise. Anyone else? Jen, thank you. Aaron, okay. Tammy, thank you. And so as Sarah alluded to, we are aware of this, and these came out, everyone. Thank you, Lori. Thank you for your candor. We're very well aware of this. And in COVID, as we know, that we had all of these supports in place. And I think it was Maria or someone else in Clark County that we were doing the walkthroughs for academic language. We were really on top of being able to provide opportunities for students to, to practice extended productive discourse. And we went online and we froze, and just that we've been working so hard, and we want to honor all of the work that you've done, and in an effort to bring back, taking a stronger look at academic language and academic English language in the classrooms, is that we do have free professional learning opportunities with the state of Nevada. First, I'm going to go over the WIDA ones. The WIDA PLs is that every Nevada educator is entitled to educator self-workshops. For leadership teams, we actually have a walkthrough tool that we're currently using, and they're free and available through the WIDA Secure portal until August 31 of next year. We will have more professional year the following year. And if you, it's just a matter of contacting your district. Content teachers have login credentials, and a lot of times we think just our EL teachers have that, but no, our content area teachers do have access to the professional learning. You would just need to contact your district English learner department to get login credentials for the secure portal. Additionally, the Nevada ELD Standards Framework, we have three courses that offer professional learning where you would learn more about Itzel and you would learn more about Nairobi, as they are one of 2 of 6 case study students. We use the case study method in 2 of our courses. But our first course, ELD 101, is a 4-hour asynchronous on-demand course that gives you an introduction to the ELD standards. EDU 288 is a 3-unit Nevada higher education course that we offer. It's called Foundations for Teaching Multilingual Learners. And we have the last 3 semesters offered scholarships to teachers to take that course. If you are a new teacher, that also it satisfies the multicultural education requirement. And finally, right now, we are this month launching ELD 201, and it is a 1-unit version, in-service only version of EDU 288, where we are offering this. We've created it on Canvas for districts to take and have district facilitators teach to their teachers. But we're still in the process of that, and we're hoping to roll that out across the districts and across the state.
Linda, I also just put the link in the chat to the Planning with the WIDA ELD Standards Framework workshop coming later this month.
And we might be full, but
Oh, you think we're full?
Yeah, I believe so, but that's good if we are. So we are cut at 40, so we'll definitely get back to you. But go ahead and sign up. You might be able to open that up. So questions from Sarah and I, and just honest and candid. We know in Clark that we still have some schools that we still have students that aren't regularly attending school. And we know that that's one of the first huge hurdles for our students to feel like they're safe and they can come back, and that sense of belonging. But just know that we really appreciate everything you do on behalf of multilingual learners. There is lots of professional learning opportunities. I know you're super swamped and busy, but we hope that at the very least you can begin to utilize these frameworks. They're very easy to use for can-dos. You have section 2A and the student moves, and again, sections 2B and 2C for teacher moves. But if your first step is getting access to those assessment results and those access reports, there are reports sent home to parents, but then your administrators also have a report as well. So you do have access to these. We just have to ask for them.
I just double checked, and we do still have some slots available. So if people or colleagues at sites want to sign up for the Planning with the WIDA ELD Standards Framework, it will cap. So it's a sign up sooner rather than later thing to make sure you get a seat.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for checking.
Yeah. And you can reach out to us if you have questions about that. I'm never going to get back to the slide though. Okay, there we go. May please put the attendance link in for this session, so make sure you get credit for being here all the way through today. I assume you have a survey link, Mandy?
Yep, I'm just going to put the survey link into the chat right now. There you go.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Mandy. Our contact information is on the screen now. If you need to get a hold of me and Linda, we're always happy to hear from you. Please send us an email with your questions. And we'll hang around a little while later. We're a little early. So if you have any questions or want to stay and chat about any of this, we're happy to stay and chat.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for all you do on behalf of our ML students. Thank you, Jen.
And just as a reminder too, if you are going to the closing session, it does start at 4:10. So you have a few minutes before the closing session, and then the rest of the day is yours. So thank you for taking the time to attend.
I did have a question in terms of like the adequate growth, because we did some goal setting with our students last year. And it's really, I tried to get answers from people to goal set with them and make sure that they're making adequate progress when there's like really no like guidance, you know. And then I look at the report and this kid made like over jumped up a whole level. He went from like a 1.2 to like a 2.3 and he didn't meet his adequate growth. And I'm like, but how? So I don't know if there's guidance or support or an explanation just so that we can better support our students.
So Sarah, yes, absolutely. So back in the day, it used to be AMAOs was just a 0.5 overall every year. WIDA AGP is calculated just like SBAC AGP. So in terms of, so SBAC AGP is how long will it take for a student to become proficient within 3 years? With WIDA AGP, it's how long will a student take to become proficient in 5 years? So especially if you have littles. So as often the first grade student will jump a year and a half, for example, in levels, but they still don't make AGP. Meanwhile, you have a student who has a 4.3 and moves to a 4.4, or excuse me, a 4.4 to a 4.5, only made 0.10th growth, but exited and made AGP. So it has to do with, it's a very complex mathematical formula. So when you're determining, so the AGP, yes, it's part of NSPF. It is, and we definitely want to look at it. But at the same time, also just look at the overall proficiency growth and look at where they need to move forward, because there'll be times where a student can make maybe 0.2, 0.3 and make AGP, and times where they make, you know, and remember too that students move very quickly through levels 1 and 2, and where our MLs begin to stagger is in 3, and they get stuck in 3. And that has to do with opportunities to practice academic language at the word phase level, sentence level, and text level. We have to look at all domains of text. And a lot of times we think about it as just being a word bank. It's not just a word bank. And one of the things that really killed us when we moved online is that they weren't practicing anymore. There wasn't structured opportunities to practice. We have we had Nearpod, we had, all kinds of great ways that they were producing language, but it was almost like a final, for example. So they never actually had that in practice, student to student practice to be able to build that. So that's why bringing back the anchor charts, but again, it has to be at the sentence level. If you're attacking the sentence level work at the different domains, that's also really critical depending upon the grade level. And then just opportunities to practice, but structured opportunities with those supports. But you're not alone with WIDA AGP.
Thank you. And then for our kinder students, that's considered year 1 for them in the 5 years to proficiency, correct?
At the end of year 1. So when they actually take the access, they're 0, but at the end of that year, they're year 1. So yes, we do not assign an EL designation to our pre-K students. So it'd be the end of first grade when they have completed year 1. And so that's why
Thank you so much.
No problem. And Sarah, know that I've asked for that mathematical formula from Adam, but I think that too is above my cognitive capacity. Like I said, I can only relate it to how like it works with SBAC. But you have 5 years to attain. So when we look at short-term ELs, we're looking at grades K-12 that have been in the program 2 to 5 years. 6 years or more is what signals a long-term English learner. And our newcomers are grades 2 and above, but that are foreign born, that have been in the country, that their first year, while they trigger participation in SBAC, their actual results aren't counted, but then the second year they are. However, they have to take the access.
Thank you. Great presentation, ladies. I'm going to jump to the closing ceremony so I'm not late.
All
Bye,
right,
guys.
thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.